I'm super excited about your trip to Antarctica. I mean, that's just amazing to even comprehend that you'll be there. I mean, yeah. So, I mean, I hopefully we can continue these conversations when you're there. I mean, it's part of the purpose of, I think the interest will be is your experiences when you're there of what's happening. I've already YouTubed, Antarctica, you know, what people go through when they're there, and it's like it's almost like another world.
Well, it's gonna be a new way of doing technology. I mean, granted, I'll have my hands in quite a bit of different things, but it'll be a different way of doing things, and it'll be interesting to see how things are done down there, with other jobs that you would typically see around here, and how other people do their work and stuff. I mean, we're a little bit more spoiled because we're from Minnesota, so and you're from Wisconsin and stuff. So this we're used to a little bit more of the cold weather than the people down south. So I mean, a lot of the stuff probably won't be overly surprising, but it'll be different, and that's kind of the
Yeah,
interest.
the negatives are in an astronomical number. When they're talking -70, that's a whole nother number to even comprehend.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, if you think about it, I mean, I've been in Wisconsin down, north of Madison and stuff when it was -50 and stuff. And I mean, yeah, we've all had the time to experience it at some duration. And I mean, I've been out in North Dakota, during the winter when the winds start hitting and there ain't a tree around and stuff, and those winds go pretty good for a good long time. So I mean, there will be that kind of weather, but like I said, I mean, if you're from Texas or something and you've never been in the Midwest in a winter and stuff like that, I mean, doing something as simple as let's say just a telco splice. These guys go out and during the winter it's 70 degrees out and they're going, hoofda, it's cold out. As opposed to you're a technician in the middle of a snowstorm and some copper line goes down, you're having to do your work in some pretty unforgiving conditions. And it'll be interesting. And like I said, not because it's going to be like a whole different world per se, but it's going to be a different environment to just see how technology handles. I mean, one of the biggest things that they warn you about going down to McMurdo Base is hard drives and it being a desert environment, believe it or not. And the failure rates of hard drives down there, especially spindle ones and stuff like that, that it's kind of like, well, if you're coming down here, expect to back your data up on at least 2 to 3 different devices because we end up with about 60, I think it was 67, 68 hard drives die uh, during their winter deployments and stuff on average. And you're looking at a maximum of 200 people there. So it literally is almost a 50% chance of failure down there. Now, I mean, obviously, different users, different principles. So they're probably walking around with thumb drives in their pocket and stuff like that. But it's just an interesting environment for technology to exist in and stuff. Um, and I think one of the most fantastic things that I still find interesting, though, about Antarctica in its principle is that we live in a world where, I mean, literally, technology has made the human existence easy. I mean, and it's only going to get easier. But if you think about it, Alexa integration into light bulbs and stuff like that. I in my house, I don't know. I can't remember the last time I flipped a switch. I just walk into a room and say, Alexa, turn on, the kitchen lights, and they turns on, and all this stuff. I mean, same thing even with some of our appliances and stuff. And the Nest thermostat and things like that, where it's like, the going to a wall and mechanically doing stuff doesn't really exist in today's homes, and it's only going to get crazier. You never know. But with Antarctica, there's a certain realm of kicking it back to the Western Union days and stuff like that, in the fact that there's a logistical dampening field on how much technology, what you can actually bring in. Also, the limitations of today's technology, which we don't see much of, but being at a polar region, it's harder to get satellites. It's harder to get, high speed internet. So when you're at home and you're cooking at 1 gigabit, I mean, down at McMurdo, it's 17 megabits shared among at times 2,000 people. Um, so there's that kind of technology limitations that people I don't think realize. During the winter when I'm going to be there, there's going to be a span of times where, I mean, they can't fly in. I mean, the airport's closed, and it's not a we're just closing it down due to staffing or whatever. It's logistically, you just can't land an aircraft there due to winds, due to weather, due to temperature, due to a million different reasons. Where I mean, it's not even a trade-off anymore of okay, there's a 3% possibility of landing. There's 0% chance of that aircraft getting back off the ice and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of that kind of interest when you start getting into like the aviation side and the nerd side and things like that, that how far technology has reached. But when you start getting into some of these areas, like Antarctica, where it's like the technology reach is minimal even today. And I think a real kickback was when you start looking at like the Dragon capsule and the exploration of going back to the moon and exploration of Mars and stuff like that. Where I mean, you go back to the Apollo days and using the bathroom was a big ordeal just based upon we only have this technology. We only have this technology. It's not really thing. To where I mean, with the space shuttle, it changed, but now today you fast forward 30 years later and the technology is there where it's like, oh yeah, no, we can do vacuum press and all this other stuff. And, well, what about radars and loss of contact and stuff like that? And they're like, oh yeah, no, we've got all these solutions in place. Oh, we put it on a Pi, a Raspberry Pi. And it's like, what? And then you go down to Antarctica and you realize that it's like, holy cow, this is some exploration, but it's still on Earth, but it's amazing the lack of technology reaching down there. Now, I mean, it's getting better every time, but there's still the feasibility of you can only bring so much stuff down there. There's rules and regulations on what you can do and what you can't do that are internationally agreed because, there's people that just go, well, they run diesel generators down there. We'll just throw nuclear power down there. It's nothing wrong with that. And granted, the Navy did it back in the day, but they ended up taking it out because it was just too much of an environmental hazard. And really, do you want nuclear down there? As opposed to if you look at the Voyager spacecraft are using, a nuclear power plant essentially, and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting how Antarctica has still posed kind of a challenge for exploration and technology. And I think that's going to be the most interesting part is to work within those confines of not having that. Hey, Alexa, turn on my lights in my room. Oh, shoot. I've got a switch. That's right. I got to flip the switch, and stuff like that. Or realize that, oh, after a long day of work, well, I'm going to go watch Netflix here and stream, and then realization that it's like, oh, that's right. Each one of us don't have a 1 gig fiber connection to Antarctica, and stuff like that. So, I think that's going to be the interesting point is seeing some of those limitations and just working around it. And I mean, it's possible. It obviously is possible, or we wouldn't be doing it. But it's going to be, I think, everybody focuses on the climate part of it. And I think that's important. But I think the biggest thing for like nerds like us is going to be the expression of technology down there and how do you really work within those confines.